Trip guarding is the most easiest thing to understand, but not always the easiest thing to execute. But when you start understanding spacing, then you'll understand how to do trip guarding. Also, guys, I apologize. When I tell you I am beat, I am beat. I've been working my ass off. I've been doing so much. So I apologize in advance for the way that I'm talking. That's why you don't hear no music as usual. Anyway, trip guarding is something to execute after learning the animation of someone jumping. And when you start playing the space game and playing neutral more, your opponent will be more prone to jumping. And when they're more prone to jumping, you need to react at the imaginary space that they will be. Like if I was to jump towards you, you should already know in your head where I would land, right? So I know where Johnny would land if he decided to jump at me from the range that he's standing at. So understanding that makes you play at that range of where he would land if he decided to jump at you. You follow me? So if I wanted to put him at default range, I know that if I take a step back and Johnny decides to jump, he's most likely going to get trip guarded. But trip guard only works well when your opponent decides to jump. But there's two different ways that trip guarding can work, and a lot of people don't talk about it. The first one being if your opponent decides to jump kick and it whiffs, it can be punished, obviously, but it also is considered a trip guard. So basically, what it would look like is something like this, right? My opponent wanted to jump at me. This is considered a trip guard. See how if I wanted to step back, he'll still be able to hit me, but slightly he can't. Like, this is why I encourage you guys to learn how to wave dash, because you see how I back up slightly where he's at when he jumps at me? See how I'm out of range right as he's jumping at me? Rather than waiting for him to jump like right there, I'm waiting a second before he's able to jump at me. Boom. Boom. So at this time, even though it doesn't look like it, he's punishable. Now, it's up to you to react to that. Boom. See that? It's easier when you wave dash, because when you wave dash, you can do things like that. You can catch them. Also, what you could do is pay attention to your far reaching. It could be high or anything. See how this reaches at a distance? So if he wanted to jump at me, see how I punish that? See that? This is trip guarding. Now, another form of trip guarding is when your opponent jumps at you and they don't expect you to basically have a button to catch them in the neutral so they don't really block, so they get hit. Hope you guys follow me. So basically what happens is your opponent would jump, but they won't block. So what happens is you'll be able to do that. Watch. This is considered a trip guarding also as well. So that's another thing. There's two different ways. Is when your opponent jumps at you and attacks and it whips, or when your opponent jumps at you at a range and don't really understand or feel as if they can just jump at you and you don't have a button to catch them in the neutral, not blocking. So again, those are the two ways. The most prone one that most people utilize the most is probably when your opponent jumps at you and uses a move. Also, it's really rare in this game, but it happened a lot in Mortal Kombat 11. I don't know if you would consider it trip guarding the way that it works in MK11, because what happens is, right, people like the flaws block, obviously, in MK11, which was considered like stealing your opponent's turn or whatever, right? So what happens is when your opponent does a string that could be around the flaws block buffer, which is like -7, -6. So when your opponent does a string that's like -6 or -7, you would just walk towards them very close, neutral duck, and they would get an input like this because they're trying to press up triangle. And since they press up triangle, usually they get a stand poke. They would jump up in the air or they were down two, which is rare. Down twos are very rare. But since you have to press up triangle, they usually go flying up in the air and hit triangle, or they would just do stand triangle. And at that point, you could down two, crush, and blow. Or if they jump very high in the air, like I just showed you, you can actually punish it very easily. Like when I see my opponent go up in the air and do that, he's automatically punishable, because you have to understand that he did a move in the air and he has a slight time to actually go back to recovery. So if you pay attention, he has 33 frames of recovery. So if my opponent just somehow just accidentally do that, he's punishable. And at a high level, you have to punish this. There's no excuse. There's no like, oh, I didn't get the punish. No, you have to punish this. This will separate you from everyone else, because you need to be able to react to all these different punishes, and you don't have to catch them in the air. Like some people will actually anti-air you and just like do something like this, or they'll do like, oh, he's up in the air, and then they'll do a string after. But you need to understand that your opponent is negative, so you get a free punish. It's just up to you to be able to react to that and punish it accordingly. You said, so trip guard is an alternative to an anti-air? It is not, because you're not anti-airing your opponent. You're trip guarding them. So they're basically, they can block, but they can't block at the same time. Like right here, if I don't punish quickly, he's able to recover. Like watch this. If I don't know my timing, by the time he lands, he's safe. But since I know that jump punches or jump kicks, jump punches are negative, I know he has a slight time to recover. So I'll punish this accordingly. It's the same way as if your opponent wanted to jump at you. You can trip guard this by stepping back slightly, making it whiff, and then going to a string. See that? See how he jump kick? You see how the jump kick is about to hit me? And it blocks, but if I back up slightly, I can actually punish them. It's called trip guarding. But if I don't do it correctly, it looks like that. See how he's able to block after? But if I catch it slightly, that's called trip guarding. It's not another alternative to anti-airing. Don't make things more complicated than what they are. I think that's what a lot of people do in fighting games. You overcomplicate things. Oh, that's similar to anti-airing. Oh, it's just like anti-airing. Oh, no. Keep it very simple. This is called trip guarding. Don't compare it to anything yet until you are very comfortable with the game and you can start correlating things together. Like footsie and neutral can go hand to hand, but they're very similar, but they're very different at the same time. So as you get better at the game, you kind of like use those words like, like beside each other, and lack of better terminology. I can't really think right now, but you guys get what I'm saying. I'm trying to think of other terminologies that we use that are similar. Like mashing and poking, very similar things, but they are very different at the same time. Like when you tell somebody, oh, you're mashing, it's really just a form of disrespect, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just more or less just reacting and adapting to it. It's more or less. You said if it's a cross jump, you can forward dash, right? You could forward dash depending on your character's movement. If I had the time and the patience, Sonic Fox actually did it. Sonic Fox actually did it yesterday when he was playing against the twins. Was it the twins or was it Bandino? I forgot, but he definitely dashed. You can dash underneath your opponent. Another thing that you can do too is that once you get really good at jumping, like, let's see something. Bear with me, guys. A little tired. So if my opponent was like jumping at me, I can run underneath him, but it's very hard to show. So hold on, let me do this, and then I'm gonna jump forward, right? So like if it was right here, I can dash underneath and make it whip. But it's hard. It's not hard, but it's like, see how he did that? Like I can go, let's see. There you go. That's also a form of trip guarding as well. You said I love trip guards. Feels good to do. Works pretty well. I love to do it against characters with broken NJPs like Johnny or Scorpion. Scorpion has a broken NJP. I'm not sure. Usually, when someone has a really good NJP, you want to pay attention to the active frames. When a character has more active frames on their jump kick, that means their jump kick active. Well, the jump kick animation stays out longer than most characters. That's why Johnny's jump kick is very strong because the active frames on it is a little longer. Plus, the hurt box sticks out further than a lot of other ones. Like if you pay attention to hers, her hurt box is a little different. It's about the same as Johnny's, but her hurt box doesn't stick out further downward like Johnny's does. And any character that has that is usually really good with NJP. Like even in MK11, you had Shang Tsung, you had in MKX, you had what's his name? You had Ermac, you had Melina, you had Baraicho. These characters had really weird animations, jump kicks, cross ups that were really hard to anti-air just because of the animation and hurt box as well. You said still got time for rank? Yeah,